This is Back Roads of Illinois server to farmers and ranchers in central Illinois and the Midwest. We remember to our veterans for today. Happy Veterans Day on Back Roads of Illinois. This is Back Roads of Illinois server to farmers and ranchers in central Illinois and the Midwest. I'm Cesar Delgado on Today for Back Roads of Illinois. I'm talking about the fundamentals with Bob Munduca in Chicago on Back Roads of Illinois. We were talking about the weather in central Illinois and the Midwest. We were talking about it with John Barrick, meteorologist for DT, and this been Back Roads of Illinois. We were talking about the weather in central Illinois and the Midwest. We were talking about it with John Barrick, meteorologist for DTN. Hey, John, how are you today? I'm sorry about the Vikings. The Bears are getting better than last year.
Yeah, well, Caesar, I am in Minnesota, but I'm a Packer fan. And so, I mean, I guess both teams lost this past weekend and don't look all that great. The Bears are certainly looking better this year. So I guess happy news for all of you down in Illinois if they keep it together. But I don't know. We've got a lot of season left. But I'm doing good, Caesar. I hope you're doing good too.
The Bears are in second place for this week.
Yeah, they are. They leapfrog the Packers this year. They lost last night. They go down to third place, but it's temporary. I have faith in them. They'll get better.
Of course. So, John, let's discuss about the weather situation, in which case for right now. Could you tell our audience about this jet stream?
Yeah, well, for the last 10 days, Caesar, we've kind of been in a stagnant pattern. You might not think of it because we've had some kind of wild conditions here the first 10 days of the month. But we've had this kind of persistent upper level ridge across the west and central, and it's been kind of a block to the weather pattern. So, systems that have tried to go into it have been kind of forced to go along the outside edge of it, which have turned into clipper systems. And we had several of them to go from the Pacific Northwest and the Canadian prairies down through the Great Lakes and into the Northeast. For the most part, they were pretty benign, except for one that came through last weekend. I think everybody in Illinois felt the effects of that one. Maybe not so much with the precipitation. We did see some scattered showers move across the northern half of the state, a little bit of snow mixed in there. But then we turned on some cold air behind it. It really brought down a big burst of cold air across really the entire U.S. east of the Rockies. And that turned on the lake effect snow machine. And we did see some lake effect snow there around Chicago and really down kind of far east central Illinois as well. I mean, areas along and east of I-57 saw some snow. And if you look at the satellite picture this morning, you can see it on there even through the clouds. So we got a little bit of snow over the weekend, a little bit of cold, but thankfully here as we're chatting on Tuesday, temperatures are starting to bump up. The burst of cold that came through is a pretty short, brief one, and we're kind of returned to that clipper pattern here for this week. Not really a whole lot of impacts here this week either, though. We've got another system that will be moving through Canada here today and tomorrow, Tuesday and Wednesday, the 11th and 12th. A few isolated showers might come through the state of Illinois, but that's actually going to bring in some warmer weather. Usually we see some colder weather come behind it like we saw over the weekend, but this one's actually going to bring warmer weather. As we're talking now, temperatures out in the plains are about 20 to 30 degrees above where we're at in Illinois. So warmer weather's on its way. It's going to be quite warm over the weekend, and there's going to be some areas here pushing records. So it's going to be quite a nice weekend, but it's not going to last forever. We will see a big change to the weather pattern starting up this weekend, and we should get a system kind of going Again, it's mostly through Canada, so it kind of looks like a clipper, but it will be bringing some scattered showers through with a cold front on Saturday. We will have some cooler air behind it, not cold like we saw over the weekend and into early this week, but cooler. And then that's really going to change the weather pattern up. Instead of all these clippers moving through Canada and just kind of grazing us with some effects, we're kind of being more in the target zone here, really the whole middle of the country for the second half of November. So we shift that ridge that was over the west and central over to the east. And then all these storm systems move into the west and they kind of try to go over that ridge again. But in order to do so, they've got to kind of go right through the Central Plains and the Midwest. And so we're going to be under the gun here for several storm systems of probably varying intensity and impact. The first one of those will be early next week. Whether or not it brings a whole bunch of showers is kind of up in the air. Models are having a hard time describing that one. And honestly, we're going to have a tough time describing all of these systems. But we're going to be at the risk of multiples of these systems bringing widespread showers, probably in the form of rain. We might get some thunderstorms out of them, depending on how warm it is and how significant these cold fronts are moving through. There is some possibility that it might be just cold enough, kind of mostly up by where I'm at in Minnesota, to produce some snow. I don't think it'll get that cold in Illinois, but things can change. So we'll watch out for that. And we might be involved with some strong winds moving across the state as well. So a lot more impacts than what we've seen over the first half of the month, where it was pretty minor outside of the one burst of cold air. So I guess buckle up and get ready. I mean, November is usually a month where things are quite active and changes are pretty typical. So we didn't have a whole lot of change outside of that cold burst here on the first half of the month, but second half of the month looks like it's going to have a lot more ups and downs to it, and a lot more potential for seeing some impactful weather. Not only move through this state, but really through the middle of the entire country too. So that should help with some areas that are in drought. I know a lot of Illinois is in drought right now. And also with the water levels on the Mississippi River, we're having some restrictions with transportation up and down the river. Hopefully this pattern change coming up here for the second half of the month can help us lift those water levels and lift the restrictions up at least a little bit to get things moving up and down the river. So yeah, lots of stuff going on here for the second half of the month.
What is your position on the temperatures right after the Thanksgiving holiday on December, John?
Oh yeah, that's gonna be way up in the air. I mean, we're 3 weeks away from Thanksgiving, so well, I guess it's 2 weeks away from Thanksgiving. I got my I got my weeks mixed up. 2 weeks away, and things can change very dramatically in those 2 weeks. We should be on kind of the edge of warmer air to our east and colder air off to our northwest. So, and it could be honestly kind of a mix of anything or everything that weekend. So we'll just have to kind of see how it goes. And we probably won't know here until we get to that weekend before whether or what the weather might look like. Models have been really, really poor at getting the weather right beyond day 5. So until we get into that kind of range there, I'm not confident on how anything's going to turn out exactly on those days, but we're going to have some opportunity there to kind of be just about anything. Could be warm, could be sunny, could be absolutely gorgeous. It could be cold, could be rainy and snowy. So I guess we'll just have to wait for another few days yet.
It's cold normally on Black Friday.
It can be, yeah. And anybody that still goes out shopping, I know that's kind of gotten to be less of an event here, Black Friday shopping. But if you have the day off and you are looking to do stuff, yeah, you're gonna have to pay attention to the weather. If whether it's cold or windy or rainy or snowy, like I said, it could be just about anything at that time.
Right.
What is your final thoughts about this winter season?
And that's where, Caesar, I think I'm a little more optimistic. Because we're in this La Nina pattern it tends to favor the storm track from Texas and Oklahoma up into the Northeast, and Illinois is right in that crosshairs there. So at least not from a precipitation side, I think we're going to do okay here, especially the first half of winter. We're kind of expected to be above normal in terms of precipitation. Now, of course, the winter season is the season where we see the least amount of precipitation anyway, and the ground could be frozen, so it might just end up being some snow that sits on top for a while. But I'm hopeful here that the more active storm track that we're predicting and forecasting helps to eliminate some of this drought that we just mentioned, kind of in the region, and help us out. Now, in terms of temperatures, you might not like me too much here, Caesar, if you don't like cold so much. There's a really good signal that models have had for honestly months now for the first week of December, and really December as a whole, being a rather uh, chilly start to the winter. And they haven't let go of that signal for a very, very long time now. And things now are starting to get into that period where we can kind of trust them a little bit more to say, hey, yeah, these things are kind of aligning where that first week of December might have come with a pretty big cold shot of air. We'll have to see how that all comes together, how cold that might be. But December could be an early start. And really what's driving this is La Nina. And it's started earlier this year than last year. Last year we were on the kind of cusp of it all through the fall season and even the early winter. We didn't really see La Nina start peaking until we got into January. This year might be a lot more, or kind of the flip side of that, where it was kind of last year was weak during the early winter and kind of came on in the late winter. Very brief period of La Nina there. Again, we're forecasting a very brief La Nina, but instead of being at the back half of winter, said it's going to be on the front half of the winter. So we might front load winter this year, where December and January will be, the months where we see some big storm systems move through, bringing down some very, very cold Canadian air or Arctic air for big time periods in here, and could lead to some rather chilly conditions here for the front half of winter. However, on the second half of the winter, the forecast is really for La Nina to go away very quickly in early 2026. And with that, it loses its grip on the pattern. And usually when we see La Nina's wane, we start to see this ridge of high pressure, warm temperatures over the eastern U.S. start building up. And if it does that earlier on in the winter season, say when we get into February and into March, we end up with some warmer temperatures. So that might help us kind of stave away some of the Arctic cold that I'll probably feel up here in Minnesota and up in the Dakotas for the second half of winter. Now that doesn't mean we won't get wintry effects. I'm sure we'll get some snow in there, and I'm sure we'll get some colder air to move through at times at the back half of winter. But the forecast is really favoring more frequency of above normal temperatures. That still leaves us on the storm track, though, to go right through the state. So it still looks like the back half of winter is going to be elevated precipitation, even though we kind of changed the temperature pattern a bit. So, yeah, just to recap, kind of a shorter winter is what we're expected here for Illinois. Probably front loaded with the cold in December and January, getting a little warmer towards the back half, maybe an early start to spring. But a very active weather pattern for most of the season here, with the primary storm track being from Texas and Oklahoma up into the Northeast. That puts us in the gun rather frequently across Illinois. So hopefully we can eliminate the drought, if not significantly reduce it, so we end up with a good start to the 2026 growing season.
Thanks, John. I enjoyed our conversation.
I did too. Thanks for having me on, Caesar. It's always good to chat with you and give some thoughts out there to you and everyone that's listening to you. And hopefully the winter goes the way you want it to. I mean, there's going to be some troubles up and down, of course, but if you're worried about drought, hopefully we get the precipitation in there and everything sets up for a good 2026.
John Barrick, meteorologist for DT and on back roads of Illinois. I'm going to talk about the fundamentals on the grains markets with the stocks and corn markets for the world supply and demand report from the Department of Agriculture. We were talking with Bob Munduca in Chicago. Hey, Bob, welcome to the show, and how are you in the loop?
Thanks for inviting me. And I'm in the loop. I am a commodity broker, been one for about 25 years. I started out on the floor of the CME group in the third and fourth options of the Eurodollar pit. So that's back in the days when there was the open outcry, and it was one of the largest pits in the world at the time. So that's where I got my footing on dealing with a lot of the things that can impact a particular market. Now, back then, it was interest rates because that's what I was trading with the euro dollars. But now it's the same type of methodology, just trying to figure out at any one particular time what might be impacting our grains, our oil seeds, our livestock markets, and all the other sectors that I cover. So that's where I'm at with that. I have a lot of resources. So my firm clears 5 different houses. So I get a lot of research from them. I also get the government data, which helps. And I layer that with my boots on the ground, that being my customers who are out there. And I also obviously take what they have to say and their observations um, seriously because they're out there, basically with their sleeves rolled up, getting the job done. So I think they see things that may not always show up in the data, and I find that to be very helpful too. So just try to put a good plan together for those who are hedgers, make sure they can protect their bottom line, and also for those who are on the spec side of the equation, just the traditional traders, just try to help them make good decisions.
Awesome. You used to work with Ted S. from Zanner and Scott the Cow Guy.
No, I did not work with him, but I do a spot every week on RFD TV. So it's about the best three and a half to 4 minutes of information you can get on TV, in my opinion. So it's first thing in the morning on a Wednesday. So I'm on there, and then I also do daily updates with the All Ag All Day Network in Texas. And then we do a longer format thing similar to this one where we talk about, well, corn, wheat, soybeans, cattle, hogs, cotton markets, things that are more impactful down there in Texas. And I've been doing that for about roughly, I hate to say it, but about 20 some odd years. So it's been quite a ride.
Shout out to our friend Tony St. James.
Yeah, I second that. Tony's a good guy.
All right, Bob, let's start with our conversation about the fundamentals on the beans markets for right now. What is your thoughts on the world's supply and demand?
Okay, so we're finally going to get some data this Friday from the USDA. So, to your question, expectations at the moment, and there's some variability here, which could create some volatility when the number comes out. But basically, for the 25, 26 carryout estimates for corn, they've got it about 2.136 billion bushels. Pretty wide range, though. The range of guesstimates right now is sub 2 billion, like 1.95, up to almost 2.5. So that is one area that's going to be kind of interesting to see how the number actually comes out from the USDA relative to expectations, because there is a pretty good variation between the high and the low of those estimates there. For beans, looking at about the 304 level or so, million bushels, that is. Range there is also pretty wide, 187 to almost 500. So again, kind of a big wide range for the beans for that carry out for the 25, 26. And I really think it's a ramification of just the lack of data that we've gotten over the 5 6 weeks or so since the government shut down. I think the market's really just trying its darndest to come up with a decent number in terms of expectations now that we're going to get the report. But it's been hard without those week to week data like export inspections and um, the flash sales and some of the data that we usually get on a week to week basis that really helps us fine tune some of our estimates going into these reports. In terms of the USDA yields, and again, it's kind of showing up in the carryouts there. Corn estimated about 184 on average, and beans about 53.1. And for the US production number in general, here in the US, corn at about, we're going to call it the mid 16s. And for the soybeans, about 4.25. So, decent amount of variation from the high and the lows in terms of those production estimates. And that's just here in the United States so far, everything I've been given it in terms of expectations. As for the world carryout, corn is estimated at about 200, just shy of 283 million metric tons, and soybeans about 124. So what does this basically all mean? I mean, we get the data and that's great, but what does it mean on the bigger picture? In my opinion, on the corn side, it's a bit of a split story. In the US, we've got this substantial crop coming and old crop stocks that appear ample. So on paper, supplies, in my opinion, look fairly comfortable. But then when you look at that global number, corn stocks, are actually, on the tighter side than we'd prefer. And it's one of the tightest levels. You're getting close to it in about the last decade or so. So that's helped us keep a floor under the market, even as the market had been probing down towards lows a couple weeks ago. And I think the fact that some of the things came together politically, geopolitically, with potentially a China trade deal, once that actually comes into fruition, maybe that'll give a bit of a tailwind for the corn market there too, and also for the soybeans. So we'll see how it plays out.
What is your thoughts with the carryout to China after the deal on last month in South Korea?
I hope. Hope is not a strategy. Okay, I'll give you that. But I would hope that China comes and does what they have agreed, at least as a framework, to do, and we get that business by the end of the year, and we get the continuous over the next couple of years. But that's a big if. We know what the deal was. We know what the anticipation could be, and that did help the soybean prices rally. Just a few weeks ago, they already started rallying in anticipation of some lower yields that were being recorded as the harvest was ongoing there. And that helped take the market off the lows initially. And then we got that extra bump with this anticipation from a Chinese deal. And then we got the more concrete information about the framework that was agreed to. So I would think that the carryout hopefully would move a little bit lower if China comes in with a little more robustness. But our problem now is we need to compete. And relative to prices down in Brazil, we need to compete with them at the moment, because with the big rally that we saw, I'm not so sure that we are the cheapest in the world, and China still has, in my opinion, the ability to go shop down there instead of us. So it's really going to be a wait and see to see how much China actually comes in. I'll take any other business I can get from Southeast Asia. I mean, we're willing sellers. There's no doubt about it. We do not want to see prices go back, down towards $9 a bushel again. We would prefer it up to where they are now, for sure, right? Or the low tens, I should say. And we prefer it up here in the 11 quarters or so. So I think it'll stay here. It's just a matter of when and if we start getting some concrete news that some kind of business is getting done in terms of export sales to China. And then, as you mentioned, I think what you're alluding to, I think that'll help keep the carry out stable at the lows. All right. We'll see how that plays out, though.
That's right, but we will see for next couple weeks. Do you have any concerns about the yields trends in various ways on the corn in central Illinois?
Well, in terms of the yield, yes. In the earlier part of the summer, the storyline went from ideal conditions out there, basically greenhouse conditions on massive acreage that was planted towards corn, and that was going to be something formidable in terms of the production. But then as time evolved, right, especially in Illinois here, for example, we saw some disease conditions appear based on the weather and such that wasn't as conducive. So yeah, I mean the yields started tapering off a little bit, which, I mean, if you're a producer, you want high prices and high yields, but that's just not the way the market goes, right? So as the yields start to erode a bit, yeah, you're not going to produce as much, but you're also hopefully going to be rewarded with some kind of similar inverse move with the price of corn, right? Just basic supply and demand and economics there, the inverse correlation between yield and price. So we'll see how that plays. When you say concerned, I mean, I would rather the farmers, the producers here in Illinois got high yields, extremely high yields, and extremely high prices, but they just don't go hand in hand. So I like the fact that the market at least was able to move in the right direction to kind of compensate for some of the lower yields that some of the farmers experienced.
Do you have any news about southern rust in central Iowa for this summer?
Well, it had hit various areas. So I read a lot of research. I get a lot of analysts' opinions, and then I factor it into my own gray matter and try to figure out what's real and what's not real. And then I mentioned I also have producers located around. And yeah, I mean, I think it's something that helped clip off the higher end of the yield expectations, right? And that would be a problem if prices were still pretty darn low. But I think the board kind of compensated for those potential lower yields out of Iowa here in Illinois, for example. So I think that, again, when you say concerned, I would be concerned if it was lower yields and lower prices, but we've seen a bit of a rally in the board to hopefully offset that.
Thanks, Bob. I enjoyed our conversation for today. How about the Cubs? Yeah, I got full of stuff from Wisconsin. However, just keep hoping.
Oh my goodness. I went to the wild card games. My sister works for the Cubs. So I could get to a game anytime I want to, basically. As long as my niece and nephews aren't going there, that is. It was so much fun going to those wild card games, and the fact that they got through it with the W. It was such a blast. But then obviously we got taken out pretty quickly afterwards. I mean, I had all kinds of high hopes for them, but they were, I'm with you. I mean, I love them. I want to see them go all the way. They were just a little bit inconsistent at bat a couple of times. I thought their defense was awesome. I think they had some golden glovers there, no problem. But the offense was just it wasn't those timely hits when you needed them, right? And that's the tough part.
The Bears are looking good than the Vikings.
Yeah, how about them Bears eking out some wins? That's exciting. I am so scared of Caleb Williams and which Caleb shows up, but He's got enough targets out there. I'm hoping he gets to the point where he finds them more often. I love the fact that he used his legs the other night to score that touchdown. So it seems like he's trying to make the right decisions. It's just sometimes he looks like, I mean, phenomenal arm talent, can whip the ball around, find his target, and sometimes he's thrown 4 feet away for some reason. So I just want to see the consistency, and then I think we got a real shot. But so far so good. And they beat they got ahead of Green Bay with Green Bay's loss last night. So we're actually in the standings. We're above them, which feels so good.
Bob Munduca in Chicago on back roads of Illinois.